Welcome to the archive. The orbital shuttle docked with a low hiss, depressurizing as the airlock to the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition training archive cycled open. A dozen wide-eyed alien cadets stepped through the threshold, their scales, feathers, and chitin glistening under the sterile white lights. This was the beginning of their elite education, where knowledge, not firepower, earned stars. Cadet Ilrix, a mantid-like tactician from the Zervani broods, clicked his mandibles with curiosity. Why do they even include primitive species here? Surely, the humans are a footnote. They must be, replied Cadet Jormek, a hulking reptilian with armored skin and overgrown confidence. My clutch watched footage of the Groth conquest in our second cycle. The humans will be quaint. They didn't notice the silence of the instructor who waited ahead. Commander Vietol was a veteran of 3 galactic conflicts. His amphibious features were worn like old leather, his single eye glowing dull blue, the other replaced with a hardened plasma lens. He wore no medals, only a black armband marked with a stylized flame, the symbol of witnesses of Terra. Cadets, he rumbled, you are about to witness the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever documented. A ripple of amusement passed through the group. They have no claws, no armor, no telepathic net. Their technology was primitive for millennia. Yet, Vietol paused. They nearly broke the Varnock Empire's will to fight. The laughter died. This archive is not about strategy. It is about survival. Understanding humans isn't optional. It's mandatory. For your sake. The cadets were led into a massive amphitheater. The lights dimmed. The screen flared to life. Historical feed, Terran War Era, 1914C. The screen showed flickering black and white footage. Trenches dug into endless mud. Soldiers caked in filth, gas masks over their faces, bodies slumped beside rats. Explosions rained down like unrelenting thunder. Gas canisters rolled across the ground, hissing a ghostly fog. Screams echoed as men clawed at their throats. Cadet Nalai, a delicate avian with shimmering feathers, leaned back, her wings fluttering in distress. What is this? Where is the purpose in this? Trench warfare, Vietol said grimly. World War I. For years. 17 million dead. Over a patch of ground no wider than a continent's spinal ridge. The footage shifted. Soldiers emerged from trenches, running into machine gun fire. Bullets tore them apart. No shields, no energy barriers, just flesh and death. Jormek scoffed, but it was forced. They're suicidal. This is senseless. They called it bravery, Vietol said. Their species has always danced on that line. Historical feed, Terran War Era, 1941C. The colors returned. Explosions filled the screen again, but this time cities were burning. Soldiers stormed beaches under heavy fire. Civilians huddled in the rubble. World War II, Vietol narrated. They created machines of destruction not to defend planets, but ideologies. Footage of concentration camps rolled, living skeletons behind barbed wire. Firebombings of Dresden and Tokyo. Then, finally, the screen went silent. A flash. A mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Humanity invented nuclear annihilation before discovering digital computing, Vietol said quietly. They destroyed entire cities with one bomb. Twice. Ilrix, normally calculating and calm, tilted his head. Why do they do this? Why continue? Because humans only surrender after everything else is burned. The screen paused. The room was heavy with silence. Cadet Nalai wiped a tear from her eye, feathers drooping. Jormek was pale, his confidence rattled. Even Ilrix, who viewed war as numbers and efficiency, seemed disturbed. You were shown honor duels, coordinated assaults, galactic war rules, Vietol said. Now forget them. He stepped forward, one hand behind his back. The humans fought with sticks, rocks, and eventually the fire of gods. They fought in frozen tundras, desert hell's capes, and underwater trenches. And when they ran out of weapons, they bit and clawed and screamed. They made war art. Jormek sneered. It's still chaos. Unrefined. Viator turned his plasma lens directly on him. You think this is chaos? Wait until you see what they did when the war came to their home. This was only the beginning. The lights dimmed again. Historical feed loading. Modern human warfare, 21st century. The final frames of Chapter 1 began to flicker in. Urban firefights, bombed cities glowing at night, soldiers running through alleys, lasers replaced by IEDs and sniper rifles, drones buzzing overhead, screams and static. Chaos, but with purpose. And for the first time, even the screen seemed to tremble. A history written in blood. The room fell into an eerie stillness. The hum of the archive system, the only sound as the lights flickered to life. The cadets remained seated, their bodies rigid, minds swirling with the aftermath of what they had just witnessed. The footage had been grotesque, but now, there was something heavier in the air. Something darker. Cadet Ilrix's mandibles clicked nervously. He wasn't accustomed to feeling rattled, but the images from the previous sequence had lodged themselves in his mind like parasites, wriggling and refusing to let go. For the first time, he began to question his assumptions about humanity. Now, the instructor's voice cut through the silence like a knife. You'll witness a new kind of warfare. This is where the humans evolved past primitive tools and entered the realm of industrial destruction. With a gesture, Viator activated the next sequence, and the room's holographic screens flickered again. Historical feed. Earth War Era, 1941C. The grainy footage shifted to a more vibrant color palette, yet the terror was no less vivid. The scene opened over an ocean, the familiar shape of an island hovering in the distance. A looming fleet of ships surged forward, stretching across the sea like a massive iron wall. Pearl Harbor, Viator's voice resonated. December 7th, 1941. The turning point in human global conflict. The footage zoomed in on the attack. Planes, unbelievably primitive by galactic standards, screaming across the sky, their metal wings reflecting the sunlight before diving into the American base below. Explosions erupted across the harbor, sending plumes of smoke and flame into the sky. People ran, screamed, and collapsed as bombs fell like rain. Cadet Nalai, feathers fluffed and eyes wide, could barely speak. That's impossible. How did they survive? Survival isn't about how you fight, Viator replied, his tone serious. It's about why. Humans fight because they don't stop, even when they're broken. The image shifted. Now, the screen showed exhausted soldiers charging the beaches of Normandy. The sound of gunfire and the hum of mortars filled the air as the camera panned to young faces, eyes wide, pale, sweat-streaked, and filled with terror. Ilrix watched, mesmerized against his will, unable to tear his eyes away. They didn't even retreat. Never, Viator said. The human mind doesn't comprehend the word surrender unless it's written in the last breath. If you defeat them, you must eradicate every last trace of them. Historical feed. Terran War ERA, 1960s CE. The screen cut abruptly to a new scene. Dense jungles, thick with mist. The cadence of helicopters and distant gunfire filled the air as the camera zoomed in on a small group of soldiers moving through the underbrush, sweat dripping down their brows. The Vietnam War, Viator explained. They learned to adapt. Guerrilla tactics. You think you're in control of the battlefield? You're wrong. The humans can redefine the terrain. The footage intensified, blinding flashes, the hum of automatic weapons. Trees felled in massive explosions. The soldiers didn't retreat. They adapted, moving from hiding spot to hiding spot, setting traps, and waiting for their enemies to show weakness. Cadet Jormek, his reptilian snout curling with distaste, sneered. What is this madness? They fought in the mud like animals. Viator's I narrowed. You think that makes them weak? Let me show you their real strength. The camera zoomed in on a soldier, face covered in grime, firing an M16 with precision. As the footage continued, it showed the soldier running toward a wounded comrade, dragging him into cover while bullets whizzed overhead. There was no rest, no pause. They were human, They were fragile, but they moved, fought, and survived. Historical feed. The Cold War, 1970s to 1980s. The screen flickered again, showing tense, gray footage of the Cold War. Leaders negotiating at tables, a game of diplomatic chess, while on the ground, soldiers fought in proxy wars, their faces grim as they held their ground in crumbling cities. Mutual assured destruction. The atoll spoke softly, almost reverently. The humans created a system where they could annihilate entire worlds with their nuclear warheads, but they held their fire, just barely. This was their strategy, a war of fear. But as the camera zoomed in on the terrified faces of civilians in a city that had been bombed, the helplessness in their eyes conveyed something else: humanity's survival instinct. Even if a city was reduced to ash, the humans would crawl from it, dragging each other to safety, stitching up wounds, and moving forward. The screen displayed nuclear tests, humans standing in the open air, testing their destruction before their own eyes. The footage was jarring. Soldiers stood by, unaffected, their faces as determined as ever. The footage ended with a hard cut, and the room was plunged back into silence. The cadets sat still, eyes wide, struggling to absorb what they had just witnessed. The archive's artificial gravity seemed heavier now, the weight of human resilience pressing down on them. "You've seen only fragments," the atoll said, voice low. "And this, cadets, is only the beginning. The humans you just saw, running through the jungle, charging across battlefields, making choices we can't even comprehend, they do so not out of some primitive urge. They do it because they refuse to be beaten. Every time they are broken, they rebuild themselves stronger." Ulrichs was silent, his mind racing. These humans, with their fragile bodies and limited technology, how had they survived this? And then, for the first time, the true weight of the atoll's words struck him like a hammer. To defeat them? To truly erase them from existence? It cannot be done. The humans will return time and time again. And when you think they're dead, that's when they strike hardest. The age of total war. The atmosphere inside the archive chamber had changed. What began as academic curiosity had turned to unease. The alien cadets sat with tense postures, limbs drawn in, antennae curled, and feathers flattened. No one spoke now. Even Cadet Jormek, whose bravado had been volcanic, sat motionless, his nostrils flaring slowly. Instructor Vietol returned to the center platform and stood silently, letting the weight of the silence do its work. The lights dimmed once more, and the holoscreen flared back to life. Not in grainy black and white, but high-definition terror. "This," Vietol said, "is where you stop mocking humans and start fearing them." Historical feed. 21st century, the era of modern warfare. The footage opened with drones soaring silently above desert cities. Target feeds blinked red. Buildings shattered. Then came urban firefights. American soldiers sweeping through rubble-strewn neighborhoods in Mosul, bullets snapping through concrete. They moved like predators, tactically sound, alert, efficient. "This is no longer primitive war," Vietol said. By the 21st century, humans mastered warfare, both remotely and intimately. They made killing precise, scalable, and impersonal. Cadet Ulrichs leaned forward. "They're fighting ghosts." "Exactly," Vietol nodded. "Machines in the sky, cyber attacks in data vaults, suicide bombers blending into the crowd. No front lines, no rules. They call it asymmetrical warfare, and humans adapted to it with terrifying speed." The screen flashed to a night raid. Human special forces breaching a compound. No shouting, no hesitation. 4 targets down in under 10 seconds. Ulrichs stared in disbelief. They're not soldiers, they're predators in human skin. Simulation feed. First contact, Zarni expeditionary invasion, Earth. The next footage didn't come from human archives. "This," Vietol said grimly, "is a classified GPC simulation based on the failed Zarni incursion. It was intended to demonstrate standard suppression tactics. Instead, it demonstrated why no one should ever invade Earth. The simulation began with alien dropships landing in the outskirts of a human megacity. The Zarni forces, armed with plasma rifles and exo-armor, deployed in perfect formation. They expected surrender. Instead, the screen erupted into chaos. Civilians appeared, ordinary humans, with improvised explosives, jamming tech, Molotov cocktails. Then came the ambushes, snipers on rooftops, traps hidden under roads, drones crashing into transports. They weren't soldiers, Vietol said. They were farmers, mechanics, children, and they fought anyway. Jormek's tail twitched. They weaponized everything. The simulation darkened. One last segment played, a captured Zarni commander's final moments. Surrounded by flames, injured, he whispered to his recording device. They're not a species, they're a force of nature. We didn't invade a world. We invaded vengeance. Historical feed, the Siege of Europa Station, year 2291 CE. Now, Vietol said quietly, you'll witness the moment that made me resign from active combat. The screen showed a cold, metallic landscape. Europa Station, a human outpost orbiting Jupiter's moon. It was supposed to be a soft target for pirate forces. Instead, it became legend. 36 human defenders, Vietol said, against over 400 mercenaries. The footage was from security feeds, humans barricading corridors, setting traps, welding doors shut. There was no panic, no pleas. They wrote names on their weapons, sang as they worked. One soldier played music from an ancient device, loud, defiant rock, as enemy ships breached the hull. They held for 87 hours, Vietol continued. They rigged the reactors, turned the oxygen system into a flamethrower. They even used the station's broken limbs as clubs. The final transmission played. A wounded human officer, bleeding from the mouth, stared directly into the camera. If you're hearing this, we're gone. But so are they. You want our station? We gave you our bones. Then the feed cut, just as Europa Station detonated, taking the attackers with it. The holoscreen faded, and silence returned. One cadet stood up, Nalai, the avian. Her feathers were shaking. Her voice cracked. I came to learn more. But this is madness. No, Vietol replied. This is humanity. Nalai removed her training badge and walked quietly to the exit. No one stopped her. Jormek, now pale and hunched, looked away. How do you fight something that doesn't care if it dies? You don't, Vietol said flatly. You learn from them, or you're buried by them. Ilrix, still seated, spoke softly. Their strength isn't technology. It's conviction. Vietol turned to the remaining cadets. That's why you're here. Not to copy them, not to outgun them, but to understand them. Because one day, you won't be watching. You'll be facing them. Lessons from Earth. Silence lingered like fog in the archive chamber. Instructor Vietol stood alone at the center, watching the cadets with his one organic eye. The other, an old plasma glass replacement, remained cold and unreadable. Around him, the once eager group of alien cadets had transformed into something quieter, heavier. They no longer sat with straight spines or folded arms. Their bodies slumped. Their eyes, if they had any, stared blankly forward, as if the horrors on the screen still burned behind their eyelids. He gave them time. Finally, Cadet Ilrix broke the silence. His mantid-like form twitched slightly, antennae raised in quiet reverence. I thought I knew war. I studied strategy, pattern recognition, attrition theory. But his voice faltered. There is no equation for them. Vietol nodded once. No algorithm. No prediction matrix. The human factor defies logic because it is not built on it. It's built on something more dangerous, Will. Cadet Jormek, once so sure of his own species' superiority, had changed too. His voice was hoarse. They weren't just fighting enemies. They were fighting inevitability. Even death didn't stop them. No, Vietol agreed. And that is what you must understand. Their resilience isn't a tactical advantage. It is an existential threat to any who assume they are weak. From the corner of the room, Cadet Nalai reappeared. Her feathers were ruffled and her eyes still red from earlier, but there was clarity in her gaze now. She carried a form pad and walked straight to VA Toll. "I file my transfer to peacekeeping diplomacy," she said. "If we can't outfight them, maybe we can outtalk them." VA Toll took the pad and gave a respectful nod. "A wise path. But don't forget what you've seen. Diplomacy only works when both sides fear what the alternative looks like." He tapped a control panel at the center of the room. A final screen descended. This time not of war, but of aftermath. Relief workers. Human soldiers helping civilians. Survivors emerging from rubble and hugging. Children playing in bombed-out ruins. Music. Laughter. A soldier giving away his rations. A nurse weeping while tending to an injured enemy. "This," VA Toll said, voice low and steady, "is what you must remember." The cadets watched, stunned. After all the blood and fire and screaming, the humans rebuilt, loved, laughed, created art and culture on the very soil soaked in their own dead. You've seen their darkness. But humans are not merely destruction incarnate. They are paradox. The same species that wiped cities from the map with nuclear fire is capable of healing with a stranger's hand, or dying to save a child, not their own. Ilrich stepped forward. But why? Why risk so much? Why feel so much? Why hurt so much again and again? VA Toll exhaled slowly. Because to be human is to endure. They don't fight because they want to destroy. They fight because they refuse to be destroyed. He turned to the wall behind him, where a quote now blazed in a dozen galactic dialects. "In the midst of hell, we still made music." Terran Soldier, Europa Station, 2291 CE. VA Toll looked at the cadets, now no longer recruits, but humbled witnesses. "You will meet humans in this galaxy. Some will be soldiers. Some will be engineers. Some will simply be travelers. Do not underestimate them. Do not mistake kindness for weakness or silence for cowardice." He let those words settle. They're the most dangerous species you will ever encounter. Not because they hate, but because they love fiercely enough to burn the universe down protecting what they care for. Ilrich stepped forward, raising a trembling limb. "Permission to enroll in advanced human tactical analysis, sir." VA Toll smiled just slightly. "Granted. That course begins at 0600. Bring coffee. You'll need it." The cadets chuckled, a light, uncertain laugh, but it was real. The tension had not vanished, but something else had taken its place: respect. Jormek stood last. He looked at the others, then at the now dark holoscreen. "They're not beasts," he said. "They're storms. They can tear down cities or water seeds." VA Toll nodded once more. "And now you understand why they're not just in our archives, but in our nightmares and our treaties." As the cadets gathered their things and began to file out of the chamber, the lights rose slowly, casting long shadows behind them. No one spoke much. They didn't need to. Outside, orbiting in the void, Earth spun beneath the archive. Blue, fragile, alive, and utterly undefeated.